Maya Chen stepped off the transport shuttle onto the gleaming platform of Galactic Defense Academy Station. The massive structure floated in the void between three stars, its crystalline towers catching the light from each sun. Students from dozens of species moved through the corridors, their various forms creating a rainbow of colors and shapes. She pulled her single-worn duffel bag closer and tried to ignore the stares. At barely 5 feet tall with plain brown hair tied back, she looked nothing like the other humans at the academy. Most came from wealthy core worlds, their uniforms crisp and expensive, their genetic modifications obvious. Enhanced muscles, improved reflexes, neural implants that glowed softly beneath their skin. Maya had none of that. Born on a forgotten mining colony at the edge of human space, she wore simple clothes and carried scars instead of upgrades. The other students whispered as she passed, pointing at her civilian clothing and rough appearance. "Look at that one," sneered Thex, a massive Krillian warrior whose rocky skin gleamed with metallic implants. His forearms crossed as he towered over his companions. "Humans keep getting weaker. This one looks like she'd break if I breathed on her too hard." His friends laughed, a collection of species known for their combat prowess. There was Zara, a sleek Veloxian whose serpentine body moved with deadly grace, and Corin, a cybernetically enhanced Terran whose muscles bulged with artificial enhancement. Maya kept walking, her expression calm. She'd heard worse on the mining platforms of Kepler 442b. The Academy's reception hall stretched before her, filled with floating displays showing the greatest warriors in galactic history. Most were aliens, their achievements measured in conquered worlds and defeated enemies. At the registration desk, a prismatic AI construct scanned her credentials. Maya Chen, age 19, from Kepler Colony 7. No genetic modifications detected. No combat augmentations found. "Are you certain you're in the correct location?" "I'm here for the tactical combat program," Maya replied quietly. The AI paused, its crystalline form flickering. "Your placement scores are unusual. You've been assigned to advanced track despite having no formal military training or enhancement. This appears to be an error." "No error," Maya said. She handed over a small data chip. "Special admission from Admiral Harrison." The chip contained her real credentials, things the Academy didn't need to know yet. 5 years fighting pirates in the Outer Rim, 3 years as a freelance security contractor. Her service record was classified so deep that even she sometimes forgot what she'd done in the name of keeping humanity's frontier colonies safe. The AI accepted her registration and assigned her quarters. As Maya walked through the corridors, she noticed how the other students moved aside, not out of respect but out of dismissal. To them, she was just another weak human taking up space that could go to a real warrior. Her dormitory was in the human section, a reminder that even in this era of galactic cooperation, species still clustered together. Her roommate was already there, a blonde girl named Jessica whose neural implants sparkled like jewelry. Her clothes probably cost more than Maya's colony made in a month. "Oh," Jessica said, looking Maya up and down. "I thought they were giving me a military scholarship student." "You look—" She paused, searching for a polite word. "Poor," Maya suggested, setting her bag on the empty bed. "I was going to say unmodified." Jessica's smile was practiced, the kind wealthy people used when talking to servants. "Don't worry, I'm sure you'll find your place here. Maybe in the support tracks? Technical maintenance is very important." Maya nodded and began unpacking. 3 changes of clothes, a few personal items, and hidden at the bottom, carefully wrapped, were her grandfather's dog tags from the Human Centauri War. The metal was worn smooth, but the inscription was still clear. Sergeant Major James Chen, 101st Orbital Drop Division. That night, she lay in her narrow bed listening to Jessica talk to friends through her neural link about the charity case they'd stuck her with. Through the window, the 3 suns painted shifting patterns on the walls, and Maya thought about why she was really here. The Galactic Council was growing nervous about humanity's expansion. Humans bred fast, adapted quickly, and had an annoying habit of winning wars they should lose. But they also had a reputation for being individually weak, relying on technology and numbers rather than personal skill. Maya was here to change that reputation, not through speeches or diplomacy, but by showing them what an unmodified human could do when properly motivated. The Academy's combat trials would begin in 1 week, and every species would send their best fighters to prove their superiority. They expected humans to be clever but fragile, good with machines but poor at actual fighting. Maya intended to show them how wrong they were, one opponent at a time. As she drifted off to sleep, she could hear the sounds of the station around her, hundreds of young warriors from across the galaxy, all convinced of their own superiority. In a week, she'd start teaching them otherwise. The next morning brought orientation and their first look at the competition. Maya sat in the back of the massive auditorium, watching as each species' representatives were introduced. The Krillians flexed their four-armed frames. The Zephyrians demonstrated their energy blade techniques. The hegemony cyborgs showed off neural-linked weapon systems. When they called for human representatives, 3 students stood up, all enhanced, all from prestigious military families, all looking like recruitment posters for the Terran Defense Force. Maya remained seated, invisible in the crowd. Admiral Voss, the Academy's director, was a grizzled Altarian whose scarred hide spoke of countless battles. "The trials begin in 7 days," his gravelly voice boomed. "You will face challenges of strength, skill, strategy, and survival. Only the strongest will advance to represent their species in the Galactic Combat Championships." As students filed out discussing strategy and forming alliances, Maya walked alone. She had work to do, and only a week to prepare. The other students saw a small plain human girl. Soon they'd see something else entirely. The training halls of the academy buzzed with activity as students prepared for the upcoming trials. Maya found herself a quiet corner in Training Bay 7, one of the smaller facilities that most students ignored. While others crowded into the prestigious main gymnasium, with its advanced holographic opponents and energy weapon ranges, Maya preferred working with basic equipment. She started with simple exercises that looked almost primitive compared to the high-tech training around her: push-ups, pull-ups, basic stretching. Other students walking past snickered at the sight. Why train with ancient methods when you could plug into a neural combat simulator? "Pathetic," muttered Corin as he passed with his enhancement-boosted friends. "Look at the cave woman doing caveman exercises." Maya ignored them and continued her routine. She'd learned long ago that the basics mattered more than fancy equipment. On Kepler Colony 7, they didn't have holographic training systems or gravity manipulation chambers. They had rocks, metal bars, and the endless work of keeping a mining operation running in hostile conditions. Her real training began after most students had gone to sleep. Maya accessed the Academy's historical combat database, studying footage from the last century of galactic conflicts. She watched Krillian berserkers tear through enemy lines with their four-armed fury. She analyzed the deadly precision of Zephyrian blade dancers, who could slice through steel with energy weapons. She memorized the tactical patterns of cybernetically enhanced soldiers, whose reactions were faster than organic thought. But Maya also noticed something the database's analysts had missed. Every species had patterns, habits ingrained by their physiology and culture. Krillians always led with their upper right arm. Zephyrians telegraphed their strikes with a subtle shift in their center of gravity. Even the enhanced humans moved in predictable ways, their modifications creating new limitations even as they overcame old ones. During the day, she attended classes on galactic military history, xenobiology, and tactical analysis. She scored well, but not exceptionally, maintaining her facade as just another unremarkable human student. Professor Kethril, an ancient Mentari whose crystalline form held centuries of knowledge, seemed intrigued by her analytical papers but said nothing. Jessica continued treating her like a charity case, offering unwanted advice about finding her niche in support roles. "The Academy has excellent technical programs," she'd say while adjusting her neural interface jewelry. "Not everyone can be a frontline fighter. There's honor in logistics." Maya nodded politely and let Jessica believe what she wanted. It was better that way. 3 days before the trials, Maya finally decided to test herself against the Academy's combat systems. She chose the basic level training arena during off-peak hours, when most students were at dinner. The room was empty except for a single Altarian student practicing sword forms in the corner. The combat simulator's AI greeted her with barely concealed skepticism. "Student Chen, you've selected difficulty level 3. This may be too challenging for your experience level. Would you prefer to start with level 1? Level 3 is fine," Maya replied, stepping into the combat circle. The holographic opponent materialized, a generic humanoid fighter with balanced attributes. Nothing fancy, just a straightforward test of basic combat skills. Maya settled into a fighting stance her grandfather had taught her, one that looked deceptively casual. The hologram attacked with textbook precision, throwing punches and kicks in standard patterns taught across the galaxy. Maya moved like water, slipping past attacks by margins so small they seemed accidental. Her counters were minimal but precise, exploiting gaps in the hologram's defenses with surgical efficiency. The watching Altarian student stopped his practice to stare. The human girl was making the combat simulation look easy, but she was doing it so smoothly that it almost looked boring. No flashy moves, no dramatic demonstrations of strength, just perfect timing and positioning. Maya finished the simulation in under 2 minutes, the hologram defeated by what appeared to be simple luck and basic technique. She bowed politely to the combat circle and prepared to leave. "Wait," called the Altarian student. His scales were deep blue with silver markings that indicated noble birth. "I am Korvash. That was interesting technique. Where did you learn to fight like that?" "Like what?" Maya asked innocently. "I just did what seemed natural." Korvash's reptilian features showed confusion, but the efficiency of movement, the precise timing, that was advanced combat doctrine disguised as basic technique. Maya shrugged. "Maybe I got lucky." As she walked away, Korvash made a mental note to watch this human more carefully. His species had ruled a war-torn sector for millennia, and he knew combat skill when he saw it. Either this girl was far more dangerous than she appeared, or she was the luckiest novice in galactic history. Word of Maya's lucky performance spread quietly through certain circles. Not the boastful crowds who dominated the main training areas, but the serious students who understood that real skill often looked effortless. A few began paying attention to the small human who trained alone and never boasted about her abilities. On the final day before trials, the Academy held a mandatory assembly. Admiral Voss stood before the gathered students, his scarred features grim. "Tomorrow you begin the trials that will determine who represents their species in the Galactic Combat Championships. Remember that you fight not just for personal glory, but for the honor of your entire people." He gestured to a massive display showing the tournament bracket. Hundreds of students would compete in elimination rounds across multiple categories: individual combat, team tactics, survival challenges, and strategic planning. Only the top performers would advance to represent their species on the galactic stage. "The galaxy watches these competitions," Voss continued. "They judge our species by the warriors we produce. Show them what you're made of." As students filed out, buzzing with excitement and nervousness, Maya remained calm. She'd spent years fighting real battles where defeat meant death, not just elimination from a tournament. These trials would be challenging, but they were still just games compared to what she'd already survived. That night, Jessica wished her luck in a tone that suggested she'd need it. Maya thanked her politely and went to bed early. Tomorrow would be the first step in changing how the galaxy saw humanity. In her dreams, she was back on Kepler Colony 7, a 15-year-old girl learning to fight from miners who'd served in humanity's frontier wars. "Size don't matter," old Sergeant Williams had told her as she struggled with opponents twice her weight. "Speed don't matter. Strength don't matter. What matters is being where they ain't expecting you to be, when they ain't expecting you to be there." Maya woke before dawn, ready to show the galaxy what an underestimated human could do. The arena hummed with energy, as nearly 1,000 students gathered for the opening ceremony of the trials. Massive screens displayed brackets and matchups, while floating cameras prepared to broadcast the competition across the galaxy. Maya sat in the human section, surrounded by her enhanced classmates who discussed strategy in excited whispers. "First round is always easy," Jessica said, checking her neural interface for updates on opponent analysis. "They match rookies against rookies to weed out the obviously unqualified." Maya nodded absently, watching the other species prepare. The Krillians performed intimidating war chants, their forearms weaving complex patterns. Zephyrian students moved through graceful blade forms that left trails of energy in the air. Even the normally peaceful Centauri delegates had brought their best young warriors, their crystalline bodies refracting light into rainbow patterns. Admiral Voss's voice echoed through the arena. "Students of the Galactic Defense Academy, today you prove yourselves worthy of representing your species. The trials will test every aspect of combat capability. Show no mercy. Expect none in return, and remember that honor comes not from victory alone, but from how you conduct yourself in battle. The first event was individual combat elimination, one-on-one matches in standardized arenas, with defeat meaning elimination from the individual championship track. Maya's name appeared on the massive display board, matched against someone called Drax the Bloodrender. Jessica winced. "Oh no, Maya. Drax is a Saurian berserker. They're known for their rage states and bone spikes. Maybe you can forfeit and focus on the team events." "I'll be fine," Maya replied, standing to make her way to Arena 7. The crowd gathering around her assigned arena was larger than usual. Word had spread about the mismatched pairing, a tiny unmodified human against one of the most feared warriors in the academy. Students came to watch what many assumed would be a quick demonstration of why humans needed technology to survive. Drax stood waiting in the arena, and Maya had to admit he was impressive. 8 feet of scaled muscle and natural armor with bone spikes protruding from his forearms and shoulders. His reptilian features were locked in a permanent snarl, and his claws left gouges in the metal floor where he gripped it. "Human," he roared as Maya entered the arena. "I will make your death quick if you show courage. Run now and live in shame." Maya walked to her starting position calmly, ignoring the jeers from the crowd. She could hear Thex laughing somewhere in the stands. "Look at that. The little human is about to become reptile food." The combat AI announced the rules. Standard arena, no weapons, victory by knockout, submission, or ring out. Medical systems would prevent fatal injury, but pain would be very real. Maya rolled her shoulders and settled into a deceptively relaxed stance. "Begin," the AI declared. Drax charged immediately, exactly as Maya had expected. Saurians always opened with an intimidating rush, relying on their size and natural weapons to overwhelm opponents quickly. His claws swept toward Maya's head in a pattern designed to force her back against the arena wall. Maya wasn't there. She'd moved sideways and forward, slipping inside Drax's reach so smoothly that it looked like she'd simply walked past his attack. Her elbow found a nerve cluster just behind his left shoulder, and her knee struck a pressure point on his thigh. Both hits looked gentle, almost accidental. Drax stumbled, his left arm suddenly numb and his left leg refusing to support his weight properly. He spun around, confusion replacing confidence. "Tricks, you use human technology." "No tricks," Maya said quietly, circling him with patient steps. "Just physics." Drax roared and attacked again, this time leading with his bone spikes. Maya flowed around the attacks like smoke, each of his strikes missing by hairbreadth margins. To the crowd, it looked like impossible luck. How could someone move with such perfect timing? But a few watchers understood what they were seeing. Professor Kethril leaned forward in the faculty section, his crystalline form pulsing with interest. Korvash sat in the Altarian section, his scales shifting to deeper blues as he focused intently on Maya's movements. Maya continued her pattern, letting Drax exhaust himself while she accumulated small advantages. A tap to block a nerve here, a push to disrupt balance there, subtle manipulations that slowly turned his own strength against him. She was like a virus in a computer system, introducing tiny errors that cascaded into system failure. After 3 minutes of increasingly desperate attacks, Drax was breathing heavily and favoring his right side. His left arm hung useless. His movements had become predictable, and worst of all, his rage was turning to fear. This small human was making him look foolish in front of the entire academy. "Stand still and fight," he bellowed, launching into a berserker frenzy that left bloody claw marks on the arena floor. Maya waited for the perfect moment. When Drax overextended on a particularly vicious swipe, she moved in close and applied what looked like a gentle touch to his neck. Drax's eyes rolled back and he collapsed like a felled tree, unconscious before he hit the ground. The arena fell silent. Then the whispers started. "What happened? Did you see how she moved? Is that even legal?" Maya helped the medical team revive Drax, who sat up groggily and stared at her with newfound respect. "How?" he asked simply. "Pressure points," Maya explained quietly. "Your species has the same nervous system vulnerabilities as most humanoids. I just know where to find them." As Maya left the arena, the crowd parted before her with uncertain respect. The small human had just defeated one of the Academy's most feared warriors, and she'd done it so efficiently that it almost looked easy. In the human section, Jessica sat with her mouth open. "How did you do that?" I've never seen those techniques in any combat database. Old family methods, Maya replied, settling back into her seat to watch the next matches. Across the arena, Admiral Voss turned to his aide, a cybernetically enhanced colonel whose data eye was still processing what they'd witnessed. Run a deep background check on student Chen. I want to know everything about her training history. Already initiated, sir. But her records are heavily classified. I'll need special authorization to access them. Voss's scarred features creased into what might have been a smile. Interesting. It seems we have a mystery on our hands. The first round continued with other matches, but word of Maya's victory spread quickly through the Academy's communication networks. The small human who'd been dismissed as a charity case had just done something that shouldn't have been possible. As evening approached and the first day of trials concluded, Maya found herself the subject of curious stares and whispered conversations. Some students approached her with new respect, asking about her techniques. Others kept their distance, unsure what to make of her unexpected capabilities. Maya answered questions politely but revealed nothing useful. Yes, she'd trained on her home colony. No, she couldn't teach her methods in a few minutes. Yes, she was looking forward to tomorrow's challenges. That night, as she prepared for bed, Jessica finally asked the question that had been building all day. Maya, who are you really? Maya looked at her roommate's enhanced features, the expensive neural interfaces, the genetic modifications that had cost more than her entire colony's annual budget. I'm exactly who I said I was. A girl from a mining colony who wants to prove herself. Jessica studied her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. I think I believe you. But I also think there's a lot more to that story than you're telling. Maya smiled and turned off her light. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, and she was just getting started. Day 2 of the trials brought the team tactical challenges, and Maya found herself assigned to a mixed-species squad that nobody wanted to be part of. Her teammates looked at her with expressions ranging from skepticism to outright dismissal, despite her victory the previous day. Great, muttered Vex, a sleek Nixian whose bioluminescent patches flickered with annoyance. They stick us with the lucky human and expect us to compete against real teams. The squad also included Torgan, a massive hegemony cyborg whose body was more machine than flesh, and Lissa, a young centauri whose crystalline form seemed fragile but moved with surprising grace. None of them had been first choices for their species' primary teams. Maya studied her teammates as they gathered in the preparation area. Vex was fast and agile but arrogant. Torgan was strong and well-armored but slow to adapt. Lissa was intelligent and had useful abilities but lacked confidence. They were rejects and misfits thrown together because nobody expected them to advance far. Listen, Vex continued, his patches shifting to aggressive reds and oranges. I don't know how you beat that Saurian yesterday, but team tactics require coordination. We can't carry dead weight. I understand, Maya replied calmly. What's our objective? Their mission briefing came from a holographic instructor that materialized in the center of their prep area. Squad Gamma 7, you will be conducting a hostage rescue operation in a simulated urban environment. Enemy forces include automated defenses, hostile combatants, and environmental hazards. You have 60 minutes to locate and extract 3 civilians while minimizing casualties. The hologram displayed a 3-dimensional map of the mission area, a maze of buildings, streets, and defensive positions that looked impossible to navigate quickly. Other teams were receiving similar briefings, but their members were already discussing sophisticated strategies involving advanced equipment and coordinated special abilities. Torgan's mechanical voice buzzed with skepticism. Standard approach would be frontal assault. My armor can absorb defensive fire while the rest of you flank. Too slow, Vex interjected, his patches cycling through frustrated patterns.
Nixian speed advantage means I should scout ahead and disable key positions. Both approaches have merit, Lisa said quietly, her crystalline voice barely audible.
But enemy sensors will detect conventional tactics. Maya listened to them argue while studying the mission parameters more carefully. She noticed details the others had missed. Patrol patterns in the defensive grid, timing intervals between sensor sweeps, and most importantly, the mission's real objective. We're approaching this wrong, she said finally. Her teammates stopped arguing and looked at her with expressions of barely concealed irritation. Enlighten us, Vex said, his patches flashing sarcastic blues. Maya pointed to specific locations on the holographic map. This isn't really a rescue mission. It's a test of adaptive thinking under pressure. Look at the civilian locations. They're positioned to force teams into predictable approach routes. The enemy defenses are designed to counter those routes. She highlighted the pattern with simple gestures. Most teams will try to reach the hostages directly, but the mission parameters only require us to extract them safely. They don't specify how. Torgan's optical sensors focused on her. Explain. The enemy's expecting us to come to the hostages. What if we make the hostages come to us? Maya outlined a strategy that was elegantly simple. Instead of fighting through the defensive grid, they would create a distraction that forced the enemy to move the hostages to what they thought was a more secure location. A location that Maya's team would already control. Lissa's crystalline form brightened with understanding. The psychological pressure of apparent defeat often causes tactical errors. If we make them think they're winning, they'll make mistakes. Even Vex seemed intrigued despite himself. It's crazy enough that it might work, but it requires precise timing and coordination. I can handle timing, Maya said simply. They entered the simulation arena to find themselves facing a urban war zone. Smoke drifted through abandoned streets while automated turrets swept the area with search beams. Somewhere in the maze, 3 holographic civilians waited to be rescued while enemy forces prepared to repel the inevitable assault. Maya's plan unfolded with clockwork precision. Vex used his natural stealth abilities to plant diversionary charges, while Lissa's crystalline form refracted light to create false sensor readings. Torgan positioned himself as a visible threat, drawing enemy attention exactly where Maya wanted it. The beauty of the strategy was that it looked like failure. Enemy forces saw a cyborg pinned down by defensive fire, a Nixian forced into retreat, and a Centauri apparently trying to hide. They moved the hostages to what seemed like a more secure location, never realizing they were following Maya's script. Maya herself remained invisible throughout most of the operation, moving through the environment like a ghost. When enemy combatants looked for threats, they saw the obvious ones her teammates were providing. They never noticed the small human who slipped past their defenses like she belonged there. The extraction itself took less than 5 minutes. By the time enemy forces realized what had happened, Maya's team was already at the exit point with all 3 civilians, having completed the mission with 0 casualties and minimal resource expenditure. Mission complete, the simulation AI announced. Squad Gamma 7 has achieved optimal performance parameters. As they emerged from the simulation, Maya's teammates looked at her with new respect. What had seemed like simple luck the day before was clearly something more systematic. That was remarkable coordination, Lissa said, her voice stronger now. How did you predict their responses so accurately? People are predictable, Maya replied. Even artificial intelligence is programmed to simulate people. They follow patterns based on what they think is logical. Vex's bioluminescent patches had shifted to impressed yellows and greens. You made them think they were smarter than us while we were actually 3 steps ahead. That's not tactics, that's art. Their success hadn't gone unnoticed. Other teams emerging from their simulations looked frustrated and exhausted, having fought grinding battles through heavily defended positions. Squad Gamma 7 looked like they'd just finished a pleasant training exercise. Professor Kethril appeared at Maya's shoulder as the teams gathered for debriefing. Student Chen, might I have a word? They walked to a quiet alcove while the other students compared stories of their missions. The ancient Mentari's crystalline form pulsed with thoughtful patterns. I've been reviewing your performance data, Kethril said. Your approach to these challenges is unlike anything in our tactical databases. Where did you learn such methods? Maya considered her answer carefully. My home colony dealt with a lot of problems that couldn't be solved by direct force. We learned to be creative. Creative? Kethril repeated, his form brightening. Yes, that's exactly the word. But creativity of this caliber suggests extensive experience with asymmetric warfare. Most unusual for someone your age. Before Maya could respond, Jessica appeared with a group of human students who'd been watching the mission results.
Maya, everyone's talking about your team's performance.
The other human squads are asking for advice. Maya excused herself from Professor Kethril and joined her classmates, but she could feel the ancient alien's attention following her. Too many people were starting to ask the right questions. That evening, as results were posted for the day's challenges, Maya found herself ranked surprisingly high in the overall standings. Not first, that would draw too much attention, but high enough to advance to the advanced rounds where the real competition would begin. She was starting to realize that hiding her abilities was going to become increasingly difficult. The Academy's trials were designed to identify exceptional warriors, and Maya was exceptional in ways that were hard to disguise. As she prepared for bed, her neural interface chimed with an encrypted message. The sender was listed only as Ghost Protocol, but Maya recognized the code. Admiral Harrison, her old commander, was keeping an eye on her progress. The message was brief. Impressive work. Remember why you're there. Don't reveal more than necessary. Maya deleted the message and lay back on her bed staring at the ceiling. Tomorrow would bring individual weapon combat trials, and she'd have to be even more careful. Her grandfather's lessons had covered more than just hand-to-hand fighting, and the Academy was about to discover what an unmodified human could do with proper training and a lifetime of motivation. Outside her window, the three suns continued their eternal dance, and Maya wondered if she was ready for what came next. The weapons arena gleamed under harsh lights as students prepared for the third day of trials. Maya stood before a wall displaying every conceivable type of combat weapon: energy blades, projectile weapons, exotic alien armaments, and traditional melee weapons that had been used across the galaxy for millennia. Her fellow competitors made their selections with confidence born of expensive training. Corin chose a plasma rifle with neural targeting assistance. Thek selected a massive two-handed weapon that matched his four-armed physiology. Even Jessica had picked up an elegant energy sword that synchronized with her neural implants. Maya's hand closed around the grip of a simple metal staff. No power source. No technological enhancement, just 6 feet of balanced steel that felt familiar in her hands. Seriously? Fex asked, his bioluminescent patches flickering with disbelief. After their successful team mission, he'd developed a grudging respect for Maya's tactical thinking. They have weapons that can cut through battleship armor and you choose a stick? It's a good stick, Maya replied, spinning the staff experimentally. The weight distribution was perfect, the grip worn smooth by countless hands. It reminded her of the practice weapons on Kepler Colony 7, where old veterans had taught her that a skilled fighter could be dangerous with anything. The weapon trials were structured as a series of challenge courses that tested accuracy, power, adaptability, and combat effectiveness. Students would face automated opponents, environmental hazards, and precision targets while being evaluated on their weapon mastery. Admiral Voss's voice echoed through the arena. These trials will test your ability to adapt your chosen weapon to various combat scenarios. Remember that in real warfare, conditions are never ideal and enemies never cooperate. Show us how you handle the unexpected. Maya was assigned to Course 7, a complex environment that simulated fighting aboard a damaged starship. Emergency lighting cast shifting shadows while gravity fluctuated unpredictably. Her opponents would be holographic pirates armed with various weapons, and the course record was held by a Zephyrian Blade Master who'd completed it in 4 minutes and 37 seconds. She stepped into the starting area and immediately felt the artificial gravity shift to 60% normal. The corridor ahead was narrow and filled with obstacles, hanging cables, debris piles, and flickering force fields that would block certain attack angles. Begin, announced the simulation AI. The first attacker came around a corner firing an energy weapon that painted the walls with brilliant light. Maya moved sideways and forward simultaneously, using the staff to deflect the energy bolts in a technique that looked impossible. The staff wasn't supposed to interact with energy weapons, but Maya had learned long ago that most energy bolts followed predictable paths and could be redirected with proper timing and angle. She closed distance with the holographic pirate before he could adjust his aim, striking pressure points that dropped him instantly. The staff moved in her hands like it was alive, each motion flowing into the next with mechanical precision. The second wave came from multiple directions. 3 pirates with melee weapons who tried to trap her in a narrow junction. Maya used the corridor's geometry against them, positioning herself so they interfered with each other's attacks while she picked them apart with surgical strikes. Watching from the observation deck, Professor Kethrill's crystalline form pulsed with fascination. Remarkable. She's using environmental factors as extensions of her weapon. The staff isn't just a tool, it's part of a complete fighting system. By the third wave, The simulation was throwing everything at her. Ranged attackers, melee fighters, environmental hazards, and shifting gravity. Maya adapted to each challenge with fluid grace, her staff becoming a blur of defensive blocks and offensive strikes. She reached the final chamber in 3 minutes and 45 seconds, already ahead of the course record. The last challenge was a single opponent, a holographic representation of a Krillian war chief armed with traditional four-armed fighting techniques. The artificial Krillian was programmed with all the standard patterns of his species, intimidating displays, overwhelming assault tactics, and reliance on natural advantages. Maya had studied these patterns extensively. During her late-night research sessions, the fight lasted exactly 37 seconds. Maya emerged from the simulation to find a crowd gathered around Course 7's exit. Her final time of 4 minutes and 2 seconds had shattered the previous record, but more impressive was how she'd done it. She made it look like dancing, whispered one Altarian student to another. I've never seen weapon work that smooth. Jessica pushed through the crowd to reach Maya's side. That was incredible. But how did you deflect energy bolts with a metal staff? That should be physically impossible. Angle and timing, Maya replied, returning the staff to the weapon rack. Energy follows predictable paths. If you understand the physics, you can work with it instead of against it. Thex shouldered through the crowd, his rocky features showing confusion and grudging respect. Human, that technique you used against the holograms, where did you learn it? My grandfather taught me, Maya said simply. It wasn't a lie, though it wasn't the complete truth either. As students dispersed to their own trials, Maya noticed she was being followed. Not obviously, but she'd learned to spot surveillance during her years in the Outer Rim. Admiral Voss had assigned someone to watch her more closely. The rest of the day's trials proceeded smoothly. Maya participated in marksmanship challenges with various ranged weapons, showing competence but not dominance. She couldn't hide her skills completely, but she could avoid looking superhuman. By evening, the individual standings had been updated. Maya found herself ranked in the top 20 overall, a position that was impressive but not suspicious. High enough to advance to the final rounds, but not so high that people would start digging too deep into her background. That night, as she sat in the common area reviewing the day's events, Corvash approached her table. The Altarian scales were deep purple with silver highlights indicating serious intent. May I join you? He asked formally. Maya gestured to an empty chair. Corvash was one of the few students who'd consistently shown her respect rather than dismissal, and she was curious about his perspective. I have been watching your performance in these trials, Corvash said, his reptilian features serious. What I see does not match what I expected from human capabilities. Meaning? My people have fought alongside humans for 3 centuries. We know your species' strengths and limitations. You exceed those limitations in ways that suggest either genetic modification or extensive military training. Yet you claim to be neither modified nor formally trained. Maya met his gaze steadily. Maybe your people don't know humans as well as they think they do. Corvash's scales shifted to thoughtful blues. Perhaps. Or perhaps there are things about human potential that have been deliberately hidden from galactic observation. Before Maya could respond, Jessica appeared with news that changed everything. Maya, you need to see this. Someone's been asking questions about your background, and the answers they're getting are very interesting. She activated a holographic display that showed Maya's official academy records. Most of it was accurate. Born on Kepler Colony 7, parents killed in a mining accident raised by her grandfather until his death 3 years ago. But there were gaps. Periods where the record showed her as unavailable for standard education due to family circumstances. Those gaps coincide with increased pirate activity in the Kepler sector, Jessica continued. Her enhanced neural interface processing data faster than organic thought. Activity that suddenly decreased whenever you were listed as present on the colony. Maya's blood went cold. Someone with serious access was putting together pieces that should have stayed buried. There's more, Jessica said, her voice dropping to a whisper. I found classified references to something called Project Shepherd, a program to identify and train exceptional human combatants for covert operations. The files are heavily encrypted, but your grandfather's name appears in the personnel lists. Corvash leaned forward, his scales now deep violet with concern. Maya, if you are what I suspect you are, then these trials are more dangerous than you know. There are species that would consider an enhanced human to be a galactic threat. Maya looked around the common area, noting the positions of other students and calculating exit routes, old habits from a life that was supposed to be behind her. "I'm just a girl from a mining colony," she said carefully. "Perhaps," Corvash replied. "But if that is true, then you are the most naturally gifted warrior I have ever encountered. And if it is not true," he paused, his scales shifting to warning colors, "then tomorrow's trials may reveal more than you intended." Maya excused herself and returned to her quarters, her mind racing. The final trials would be the most challenging yet, and it was becoming clear that she couldn't continue hiding her abilities without arousing even more suspicion. As she lay in bed that night, Maya thought about her grandfather's final words before he died. "The galaxy thinks humans are weak because we let them think that. Sometimes that's an advantage, Maya, but sometimes you have to show them what we're really capable of." Tomorrow would determine which path she chose. The final day of trials dawned with unusual tension in the academy. Overnight, word had spread through the student body about the mysterious human who was quietly demolishing competition records. Maya woke to find Jessica already gone, probably avoiding the awkwardness of rooming with someone who might be more dangerous than she'd admitted. Maya dressed in her simple training clothes and made her way to the main arena, where the championship elimination rounds would determine each species representative. Only 24 students remained from the original 1,000, and the atmosphere crackled with nervous energy. Admiral Voss stood at the center of the arena, his scarred features more serious than usual. "Today's trials will test everything you've learned. Combat scenarios based on real galactic conflicts, survival challenges that have broken veteran soldiers, and strategic puzzles that have no clean solutions. Only the strongest will advance to represent their species in the galactic championships." Maya noticed she was being watched more carefully now. Academy security personnel had positioned themselves at key points around the arena, and she recognized the subtle signs of hidden surveillance equipment. Someone was very interested in recording her performance in detail. The first challenge was announced as a free-form combat scenario. No rules, no restrictions, and opponents selected by random draw. Maya's name appeared on the board matched against Valorian Keth, a hegemony champion whose cybernetic enhancements made him more machine than organic. The crowd fell silent as the matchup was announced. Valorian was famous even outside the academy, a veteran of the Rim Wars whose body had been rebuilt with military-grade combat systems. His reaction time was measured in microseconds, his strength could bend steel, and his tactical computer could process battlefield data faster than most species could think. "This should be interesting," Admiral Voss murmured to his aide. "Our mysterious human against the hegemony's finest young warrior." Maya entered the combat arena to find Valorian already waiting. He stood 7 feet tall, his body a seamless blend of organic tissue and advanced technology. Red optical sensors focused on her with mechanical precision, and she could hear the soft whir of internal systems calibrating for combat. "I have studied your previous matches," Valorian announced, his voice carrying electronic harmonics. "Your techniques are efficient but primitive. This will be concluded quickly." Maya settled into a fighting stance, her movements relaxed and natural. Around the arena, thousands of students and faculty watched in fascination. This was the matchup everyone had been waiting for. Advanced technology versus whatever the small human had been hiding. "Begin," the combat AI declared. Valorian moved with inhuman speed, crossing the arena in a blur of metal and fury. His cybernetic limbs struck with hydraulic power while his tactical computer calculated optimal attack patterns. Any normal opponent would have been overwhelmed in seconds. Maya wasn't there when his strikes arrived. She moved like smoke around his attacks, each dodge timed to perfection. Valorian's enhanced reflexes meant nothing if he was aiming at empty space, and his superior strength was useless if it never connected. Maya had studied his model of cybernetics during her research, and she knew exactly how his systems would respond to different stimuli. The beauty of fighting enhanced opponents was that their improvements made them more predictable, not less. Valorian's computer-guided attacks followed optimal patterns that Maya could read like a book. She slipped past his defenses with surgical precision, striking at joint connections and power coupling points that his designers had never expected an opponent to know about. "Impossible," Valorian snarled, spinning to track her movements. "My sensors show you beginning to move before I commit to attacks. You cannot predict tactical computer calculations. I don't have to predict them, Maya replied, dodging a devastating punch that cracked the arena floor. I just have to understand them. She demonstrated by flowing around his next attack sequence, her movements so perfectly timed that she seemed to be dancing to music only she could hear. Each of Valorian's strikes missed by fractions of inches while Maya accumulated tiny advantages. A disrupted power flow here, a destabilized gyroscope there. The crowd watched in stunned silence as the human girl systematically dismantled a warrior who should have been unstoppable. Maya made it look effortless, like she was playing a game whose rules she'd written herself. After 5 minutes of increasingly desperate attacks, Valorian's systems began showing stress fractures. His enhanced reflexes couldn't compensate for fundamental design flaws that Maya exploited with ruthless efficiency. When she finally struck the master control node at the base of his skull, Valorian collapsed like a puppet with severed strings. The arena erupted in chaos. Students from dozens of species argued about what they'd witnessed, while faculty members reviewed sensor data with expressions of disbelief. Maya had just defeated one of the most advanced warriors in known space, using nothing but technique and timing. Admiral Voss descended to the arena floor, his scarred features unreadable. Student Chen, that was a remarkable display. I'd like to discuss your background in more detail. Of course, Admiral, Maya replied, though her eyes were already calculating exit routes. The masquerade was over, and she had decisions to make. Before Voss could escort her away, Professor Kethril appeared at her shoulder. The ancient Mentari's crystalline form was pulsing with urgent patterns. Admiral, if I might suggest that Student Chen requires medical evaluation after such an intensive combat sequence. Voss paused, recognizing the code phrase for, "This conversation needs to happen privately." He nodded slowly. Excellent suggestion, Professor. Student Chen, report to Medical Bay 7 for standard post-combat assessment. As Maya left the arena, she could feel hundreds of eyes following her. The whispers had started already, spreading through the Academy's communication networks at light speed. The small human who nobody had taken seriously had just done something that redefined what unmodified humans were capable of. Medical Bay 7 turned out to be empty, except for Professor Kethril, whose crystalline form sealed the room's security systems. "We need to talk," he said without preamble. "About what?" Maya asked, though she suspected she knew. "About Project Shepherd, about your grandfather's service record, and about why the Galactic Council is so interested in keeping human potential underestimated." Kethril's form brightened with urgency. "Maya, there are forces in motion that go far beyond these Academy trials. Your performance here is being watched by beings who consider humanity a potential threat to galactic stability." Maya sank into a chair, finally allowing her exhaustion to show. "How much do you know?" "Enough to understand that you're not just a gifted fighter, but a product of systematic training designed to create warriors who could defend humanity against existential threats. Your grandfather was part of a program that prepared for the possibility that our galactic neighbors might someday decide humans were too dangerous to coexist with. The truth hung between them like a loaded weapon. Maya had been sent to the Academy not just to prove human capability, but to demonstrate that humanity was prepared for whatever challenges the galaxy might present. "What happens now?" Maya asked. Kethril's crystalline form pulsed with complex patterns. "Now you face the hardest decision of your life. You can continue hiding your abilities and accept a modest ranking that won't threaten anyone, or you can show them what humanity is truly capable of and change the balance of power in known space." Before Maya could answer, alarms began sounding throughout the Academy. Emergency lights bathed the medical bay in red as Admiral Voss's voice echoed through the communication system. "All students and faculty report to emergency stations. We have received word of an imminent attack by unknown hostile forces. This is not a drill." Maya and Professor Kethril exchanged glances. The trials were over, but Maya's real test was about to begin. The Academy's defensive shields flickered as massive ships dropped out of hyperspace around the station. Maya pressed against the observation window in Medical Bay 7, watching as sleek vessels with unfamiliar designs took attack positions. Their hulls were matte black, absorbing light rather than reflecting it, and they moved with predatory grace that spoke of advanced technology. "Rogue fleet," Professor Kethril said grimly, his crystalline form darkening with concern. "Pirates and mercenaries who've been raiding frontier worlds for the past 5 years. But they've never attacked anything as well defended as the Academy. Admiral Voss's voice crackled through the communication system. All combat-capable students report to assigned defensive positions. Faculty to emergency command stations. This is a code red scenario. Defend the Academy at all costs. Maya turned from the window, her decision crystallizing. The time for hiding was over. Professor, I need access to the armory. Maya, you're just one student. Even with your abilities, you said I was the product of systematic training, Maya interrupted. That training wasn't just for Academy trials. It was for situations exactly like this. She moved to the room's communication terminal and entered a sequence her grandfather had made her memorize years ago. The screen flickered, then displayed a message that made Professor Kethral's crystalline form pulse with surprise. Shepard protocol activated. Operational authority recognized. Impossible, Kethral breathed. Those are command-level access codes. Maya's expression had changed, shedding the last pretense of being a simple student. Professor, I need you to patch me into the Academy's tactical network, and I need Admiral Voss to understand that he has a weapon he doesn't know about. The Academy shuddered as the first enemy attack struck the outer shields. Through the observation windows, Maya could see smaller craft launching from the pirate fleet, boarding pods designed to penetrate the station's defenses and deliver assault teams directly into the corridors. Kethral's crystalline fingers danced over the communication controls. You're connected to the command network. Admiral Voss can hear you directly. Maya keyed the transmitter. Admiral, this is Student Chen. I'm requesting permission to implement unconventional defensive tactics. Voss's voice crackled back, strained with the pressure of coordinating the Academy's defense. Student Chen, report to your assigned shelter immediately. This is not a training exercise. Sir, with respect, I'm not a typical student. Check my authorization codes under Shepard protocol. A pause, then Voss's voice returned with new urgency. Those codes are classified beyond Academy level. How do you have access to them? Because I was sent here for more than just trials, Admiral. Let me help coordinate the defense. I know how pirates think and how they fight. Another explosion rocked the Academy as enemy boarding pods breached the outer hull. Maya could hear the distant sound of weapons fire as Academy defenders engaged the first wave of intruders. Approved, Voss said finally. What do you need? Maya was already moving, Professor Kethral following as she headed for the command center. First, I need a complete tactical display of enemy positions and Academy defensive assets. Second, I need authorization to coordinate student combat teams according to unconventional parameters. They reached the command center to find controlled chaos. Holographic displays showed enemy forces advancing through multiple sections of the Academy, while defensive teams struggled to contain the incursions. Admiral Voss looked up as Maya entered, his scarred features showing grudging respect. Student Chen, or should I say Agent Chen, what's your assessment? Maya studied the tactical displays for 30 seconds, her mind processing patterns that would have taken military computers minutes to analyze. They're not trying to destroy the Academy. This is a capture operation. They want the students, specifically the young warriors from each species. They're building an army. Confirmed, reported the tactical officer. Enemy forces are using non-lethal weapons and capture techniques. They're herding students toward collection points. Maya's fingers danced over the tactical interface, highlighting specific positions on the station schematic. Admiral, they're using standard pirate tactics adapted for station assault. Predictable patterns based on their experience with civilian targets. But this isn't a civilian target. She began issuing orders with calm authority that belied her apparent age. Redirect Team Alpha to Corridor 7. The enemy will stage there for their next advance. Have Team Beta withdraw from Section 4. It's a diversion. The real assault is coming through the cargo bays. How can you possibly know that? Demanded Colonel Rex, the Academy's head of security. Because I've fought these tactics before, Maya replied without taking her eyes from the displays. Pirates are predictable when they think they have an advantage. As her predictions proved accurate, the command staff began following her directions without question. Maya orchestrated the Academy's defense like a conductor leading an orchestra, positioning teams with perfect timing and precision. But the enemy forces were more numerous than expected, and they had advantages the Academy hadn't prepared for: advanced stealth technology, weapons that could penetrate Academy shields, and most concerning of all, detailed knowledge of the station's layout. Admiral, Maya said grimly. They have inside intelligence. Someone provided them with academy schematics and defensive protocols. Before Voss could respond, a new voice cut through the command center's communication system, cold, mechanical, and familiar. Greetings, Academy Command. This is Fleet Admiral Nexus of the Rogue Coalition. We have come for your most promising students. Surrender them peacefully and the rest will be spared. Maya's blood went cold as she recognized the voice. Nexus had been a hegemony admiral who'd gone rogue 5 years ago, taking his entire fleet and becoming one of the most wanted criminals in known space. He specialized in recruiting young warriors from various species, building a private army that answered only to him. Admiral Voss, Maya said quietly, I request permission to implement Shepard Protocol fully. Voss studied her for a long moment, weighing the implications. Shepard Protocol meant releasing all restraints on Maya's capabilities, acknowledging that she was far more than a student. It meant revealing humanity's hidden preparation for galactic warfare. Approved, he said finally. Show them what humans are capable of. Maya's transformation was subtle but complete. The hesitant student disappeared, replaced by a warrior who'd spent years fighting in humanity's shadow wars. She began coordinating a defense that was as elegant as it was deadly, using the Academy's own students as her weapons. Korvash, take your team to Junction 7. Use Altarian stealth protocols. They won't expect that from Academy students. Vex, your squad needs to reach the power core and implement tactical blackout in sections 4 through 8. Thex, you're going to lead a frontal assault on the primary landing bay. Make them think that's our main effort while the real teams move into position. Jessica appeared on the communication channel, her voice tight with fear and determination. Maya, we have enemy forces moving toward the human dormitories. They're specifically targeting our section. Understood, Maya replied. Implement scatter protocol. Make them work for every capture. Help is coming. She turned to Admiral Voss. Sir, I need a combat team and access to the advanced weapons locker. It's time to end this. As Maya prepared to leave the command center, Professor Kethril caught her arm. Maya, if you do this, there's no going back to being underestimated. The galaxy will know what humans are capable of. Maya looked around the command center at the display showing her fellow students fighting desperately against overwhelming odds. Then she met Kethril's crystalline gaze with eyes that had seen too much for someone her age. Good, she said simply. Maybe it's time they knew. She gathered her equipment and headed for the corridors where her real education would finally be put to use. The Academy trials had been preparation. This was the test that mattered, not just of her abilities, but of humanity's place in a galaxy that was about to learn why humans had survived and thrived, despite being physically weaker than most of their neighbors. Behind her, Admiral Voss watched her go with a mixture of pride and concern. Project Shepard had created exactly what it was supposed to, a warrior capable of defending humanity against any threat. The question now was whether the galaxy was ready for the consequences of that success. As Maya disappeared into the battle-torn corridors of the Academy, her grandfather's final lesson echoed in her mind. Sometimes the best way to win a fight is to make sure your enemy never wants to fight you again. The galaxy was about to learn that lesson firsthand.